Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Becca and we are sitting in my freshly finished greenhouse. It is a sunny day, so if I look progressively redder and sweatier, please forgive. I turned off the ventilation so that I could film this video without all of the noise, so bear with me. Today we're doing a Q&A all about this build, talking about the process, regret, would I do it again, and the biggest question, how much did it cost? I was crunching some numbers last night and I'm actually surprised by the number. So stay tuned to find that out. Before we get into the questions, I wanted to just spit some facts about the build in general so that we're kind of all on the same page about the basics. So first of all, it's a 12 by 24 foot building. The long end of the greenhouse faces south, the front door faces west, and the north side of this greenhouse is actually closed in except for a small sliver at the top to just add interest and a little bit more light. The north side is completely closed in because the north doesn't really bring in much light anyway, and I was able to add in some insulation back there to just help pad the greenhouse for winter weather because I do live in mid-Missouri. We don't get super harsh winters, it really just depends on the year, but I am in zone 6, so we do get below freezing for a good portion of the winter. The roof is made of 2x6s to withstand the weight of snow and things like that, and the rest of the frame is 2x4s. The siding and the roof is actually twin wall polycarbonate. The foundation is a rock foundation. It's like a specific type of rock that as it's packed down and it gets wet, it kind of gets harder and harder. I guess I can start off by saying as well that the greenhouse, we started the construction in April 2022. And we just finished in basically April 2024. I did not expect it to be that long of a process. I'm so used to seeing people on YouTube and whatever else just putting up buildings so fast and just building things on an insane timeline. And even though this is my full-time job to make plant content, it still took me forever. I had a baby in the whole process. I got pregnant in October 2023, and it just, it really threw everything for a loop. But despite the fact that it took so long, it's beautiful. I love it. I'm so proud of it, and I feel like because I took so long to do it, I was able to make decisions along the way. Things kind of changed as we were building, as is normal for any timeline really, but because there was so much time and we did a majority of the work ourselves, I don't know, it really evolved as we went, and I do appreciate that. Okay, so the first question is, do you regret building versus buying? And the answer here is complicated because, as I've just mentioned, it took 2 years to build this thing. And if I was to buy a prefabricated greenhouse, which a lot of people do, there's literally nothing wrong with it. A lot of them are really great. It would have been done in like a summer because you build it in like, I don't know, a week or a weekend, depending on how many people you have and how big it is. And then you spend a couple of weeks to a couple of months like sprucing it up and making it feel really special. And that process of like sprucing up the greenhouse and making it feel special took me like a day. So would it have been faster if I bought a prefabricated building? Absolutely. Would it have felt as custom? No. So for that reason, I am glad that I did what I did because I love that it's made of wood. But for my first build ever, I should have bought a prefabricated greenhouse just so that I could like get a taste or a hint of what I want, what is needed, because I did everything from scratch. I had to figure all of that out on my own, which I do enjoy doing that kind of stuff, but again, it took me 2 years. So I do think that if I bought a prefab, it would have been done in a summer, and I would have had so much more time to enjoy the greenhouse and just evolve the greenhouse into so many different iterations. I just wouldn't have been able to make it as custom. And I guess that's just the pros and cons of building it custom and buying a prefab. If it is your first greenhouse ever, unless you're making it pretty small, like a 10 by 10 or a 10 by 12, I think that it is probably better to go for a prefab just to work all of the kinks out. And then eventually, if you want something different, you can build one now that you know what you want and kind of what goes into a greenhouse running. I guess in a way I do regret building, and I hate saying that now that I'm sitting in this beautiful greenhouse, but it's true. I do regret the way that I did it, but I am really proud of how it turned out. Along those same lines, like what would you do differently if you were to do this project again? I think I go back and forth about the cement foundation. Like I did the rock foundation, as I said, and I have thought about if I just did the cement, I feel like I wouldn't have had to worry about any sort of weeds coming in. I feel like I could have bolted it into the cement and not had to go through the process of digging holes and anchoring the building, all of those things. That was like something that I went back and did later because I wasn't originally going to anchor the building. Okay, I was going to, but I was going to do it differently, and it probably wouldn't have been as secure. Another thing that I regret, but I mean, it's silly to say this because I can go back and do it still, but I wish that I would have taken the time to close in the bottom half of the other side of the greenhouse with insulation. I haven't done that yet, and I don't know if I will. I don't know. It might pose a problem in wintertime, and I don't really know yet because I haven't had a winter using the greenhouse yet. So we will definitely have to see about that. I think it would have been cool to have like a really big double door, but they're also so expensive. So there's just some things that I just didn't want to spend the money on. Like the front door that I bought, just a typical classic front door, was like $500. Also, I don't particularly love the color of the stain. And I do think it's like very rich, and I like that it's like a dark, rich color, but it pulls very, very red, and I have honestly never liked it, but I wasn't going to completely strip all of the wood and start over. Once I put on that first coat, I was like, crap. It is what it is. And I didn't want to test out stains, and that's how I ended up in this situation. So it's kind of a theme in my life. I don't really test out paint or stain, and I end up regretting it. So I am learning from that, and next time I ever stain something to this magnitude, I will be testing the stain, because that just is so silly that I didn't do that to begin with. But it has faded to be a little bit more of a like brownish wood, but it does pull very, very red, and I just really don't like that. It looks good with the bricks, I will say that, but besides that, I don't really like it. What was the most surprisingly difficult thing about building it? I think just all of the little things that pop up that you realize you need, like all of the different ways to support a building. This building doesn't have any like center supports, so we had to be really careful and mindful about how we were going to keep the building up and not have it collapse in the wind or just over time. It's actually crazy to think. Like in my mind, when we were in the process of like framing and building, there was so many moments where we were like, oh shoot, we're gonna have to put a beam down the center just to like offset the weight. But we found other ways, and I actually spoke with a structural engineer at a building company, and he gave us some really great tips and just advice on how to make this building safer. But yeah, that was very, very difficult. And even though I had plans drawn up by an architect, there was still so much that was kind of in limbo that if you've never built something before, you're not going to think about. And if this building was a lot smaller, I probably wouldn't have had to think as much about it as I did. But because it is 24 feet, this is like 300 square feet, it's a bit more structurally intense. Cutting out the holes for the plugs in the plywood was so hard. I just always messed it up, and my husband is so good at it. That's something that I just was not expecting to be so difficult. Like you'd think that it's just like a couple of measurements and a little bit of math and you're good, but somehow it would never work. And I was just like baffled that it never worked for me. And then he did it, and he made like literally perfect cuts. I don't understand. I think it's just something that as you do it more often, I don't know, you get better at it. But yeah, that was definitely really hard. Once we got the structural stuff done, it actually did surprise me like how easy this was. Like framing the walls and doing all that stuff. Like you just need more hands, but it's not hard. What is your favorite part about it? Favorite detail or area? Okay, so the view behind me is my favorite. And I knew that I wanted to make that a special moment because you walk into this grand greenhouse, and I just wanted it to feel really special and have my pottery there just as a like fun display. Of course, I also used the pots, but a lot of those were just sitting under my cabinets, just waiting for a plant, and I love that they now serve as like functional decor. I really, really love that just whole area with the hand tools. Using the wood that would have been just trash is great because wood is not cheap and it just feels good to use like every last bit. So that's definitely my favorite part. And I also really love the way that this big north wall exterior turned out with the green paint. It is just so beautiful. It's the perfect green in my opinion. It is called Trailing Vines by Behr, and it's just so beautiful for the purposes of this greenhouse. I painted the door that color, and I painted my furniture that color too. I'm curious about how much space in your house you gained by moving things in there. I gained a lot of space, and it was a lot of space in my garage and in the cabinets underneath my green wall, like where the plants sit on that bench thing. Those are basically empty now, which is so funny because I made that because I needed so much more storage for my plant stuff. And now a lot of that extra stuff is out here. Excuse me while I'm wiping my sweat. But yeah, I gained a lot of space specifically in those two places. And now I'm like, well, I don't know what to put in these units underneath my plant wall. I guess I'll just keep them empty because I don't want to just like get more stuff to put in them. But I still have all my pest control stuff in there, which I wouldn't mind putting out here, but I would worry about it getting too hot in here or something for them. I don't know. There probably will be more stuff that will come out, but it's also nice to like put all of my antique finds and things like that that I've been collecting, like this piece right here that I'm pointing to. My grandma gave me that a couple years ago, and it was always on her porch, and it was just a really special piece to me, but it's been hanging in my garage just like so unceremoniously, and now it's in here and it's just really special, and I just love the way that it looks. What was your favorite part of the process? Thinking back to all of the people who have touched this greenhouse and worked on it and just made it special, because every part that I look at in the greenhouse, I remember somebody visiting me and me being like, so you want to work on the greenhouse? And it's just special to think about my friends and family just being so willing to be here and like be put to work on their vacation and stuff. And my husband's grandparents basically, yeah, they like helped frame this entire thing, which is just so special to me. I absolutely love his grandparents. They are just amazing people, and they were a huge part of this greenhouse, and they were so invested in the end process and how it all went. They were always checking in, and yeah, it's just special to know how many people have touched this greenhouse and just made it what it is, like on an emotional level. And all of the time that me and Daniel spent out here, just us two, is also really special. It was like funny bonding time. And honestly, Daniel is incredible for sticking with me through it, because some of the days I was just so sassy, but it was a good relationship builder for us. Is the shade cloth permanent or is it seasonal? I actually don't know. I think that it's going to be seasonal. I don't imagine that I'll need it in in winter, but I very well could. I could also switch it out for a lower percentage of shade. It's currently 70%, which honestly has been really great. I don't know if I would want to go any higher than that. I have noticed a little bit of sunburn on my plants, but really not a lot, and I think that they'll adjust pretty well. Tropicals are not full sun plants typically, so it would be full sun without any sort of shade cloth, and that was never my plan. I always wanted to have a shade cloth on the greenhouse, and the reason that I put it on the outside, this was something that Daniel and I argued about a lot. I should put it on the inside because that would preserve the shade cloth from the elements and it would last longer. Like, it probably would never have to be thrown away. But because of the way that the roof is constructed and the way that we have supports going across, it has to be over the top, or else it would just like cut the roof off like right above my head, which is absolutely not what I wanted visually or feelings wise. So it does go over the top of the greenhouse, and I do expect to have to replace it every couple of years just because of the wear and tear of the wind and the rain and everything else. Is the intention to sell plants? No, my intention has never been and probably will never be to sell plants. I always say that I'm just not nice enough to do that. Like, I am a nice person. I am a pleasant person, but I just don't think that I am cut out for that kind of business. There's just too many variables, too many possibilities of plants dying. If I ever did sell plants, I would do it locally, like at a farmer's market or something like that. This would be a great place to grow plants if I wanted to. I'm not ruling it out forever, but I don't think so. No. Knowing what you know now, if you could go back in time, would you still have built it? Honestly, I don't know. Like, my first response would probably be no. And I hate saying that because, again, I'm sitting in this beautiful greenhouse. But just with the amount of time that it took and the season in my life that I chose to build it, it was just not smart. Like, I should not have... Okay, well, I started building it not thinking that I would be in my mommy era yet. Like, I really did... I was watching back at the first videos of the greenhouse. I really thought that I would be done by the end of summer 2022. Like, I really thought that. I was so mistaken, and the thought that always comes back to me is if I kept it a 12 by 16, I possibly could have. I don't think that's true either, but I do think that it would not have taken 2 years. I think it maybe would have taken like 6 months to a year, because having so much more building added a lot of difficulty in the structure that we had to think about. Like, there was long breaks of us just like trying to figure out what to do to keep it safe. And then also just more materials. It cost more to make it bigger, and I wasn't exactly planning for that financially because I paid for it over 2 years, and I was using like obviously business funds. This was like a part of my YouTube channel and a part of my job, so I was able to like use money that I make on YouTube to build this. It would have saved me some money if I made it smaller. I would have maybe not spent so much time like between projects, like trying to save up and stuff like that. Now that I've done it, I feel like I could have waited a couple more years, but I didn't know that at the time. You know, I didn't know that it would take so long. I didn't know that I would get pregnant when I did. And so many of these things I just couldn't predict. Knowing what I know now, I think that I would have waited. Like, if I could go back in time, I would have told myself to just pump the brakes and like wait a little bit, but it is what it is. And I mean, I did name regrets, but honestly, I have no regrets. I'm glad that I did it, but I did make my life more difficult than it needed to be, you know? Okay, do you have a heater or feel that you will need one? I do have a heater. It's a propane heater. It's not currently set up, so I don't exactly know how it's going to go, but I absolutely will need a heater, especially in the evening. I did notice that like over the winter before the building was like actually being used, it did stay really warm during the day in the wintertime, so the sun would definitely heat it up, but it would only last like a couple hours into it being dark. So with that being said, the heater would probably only run on like very cloudy days and at night. So I'm not anticipating using like a ton of energy to heat it. And for cooling, as you can see, I'm sweating. I don't have any sort of like air conditioning or anything like that in here. I'm basically just relying on the ventilation fan, which is like right here, and then it pulls cool air in from outside. So if it's like really hot outside, pushing out hot air and pulling in warm air. So I do anticipate it being kind of hot in here. But as long as there's a lot of airflow, we should be fine. So I have the ventilation fan, I have an in fan, and then I have 2 fans besides those fans to just move the air. And as long as the air is moving and I'm keeping the plants watered, it should be fine. But we'll see. Again, this is all a learning process, and the shade cloth has helped immensely with keeping it cool. Like, since I put the shade cloth on this, I don't think that it's gone above 100 degrees. And before the shade cloth, I'm not even kidding, it would be like 160 degrees, like 170 degrees. It was insane. Will you be moving some of your bigger Anthurium into the greenhouse? Yes, I will. And I wanted to really test out some plants that I didn't care as much about out here before I brought in more special plants. But I have a couple of Anthurium that I'm going to be bringing out here, particularly my Anthurium regale, which if you have watched and like paid attention to the lore surrounding that plant, I'm shocked that it's big enough to move out here. Like, it has had such a transformation. It is so happy. I am so proud of it. And it is just way too big for the greenhouse cabinet. Like, the newest leaf coming out is literally like this, like stem. It's just, yeah, it's way too big. It needs more space. So that will be coming out here, and a few other things, and I'm super excited about it. I got some really great ideas for like just what the heck to do with the space on my last greenhouse tours video, or I guess on my first greenhouse tours video. If you want to see that whole process of what I bring out and how this greenhouse evolves, definitely check out my greenhouse tours videos. Subscribe to my channel so that you can get updated. I will be posting those probably pretty often in the next couple of months just because I'm so excited to be out here. It's yeah, it's a dream come true. Question that everybody has been waiting for: how much did this all cost? Okay, so to gather all of this, I went through my bank. I went through my Lowe's app, my Home Depot app, and my Menards account. And I did not look at my Amazon. I realized that as I was sitting down, but I added up everything from the wood to the siding to the bricks to the rock to the door, just everything. Everything that I could think of and everything that I could see in my purchase history of building this greenhouse. So the total that I was able to calculate was $7,389. And I am going to say, give or take, like $500 to $1,000 for expenses that I just couldn't find. For a 12 by 24 greenhouse, souped up with all of the things, for $8,000, I don't think you're going to find that readily available. At least a wood frame. You could probably find that maybe in a prefab if it was like a metal or like aluminum frame. I don't exactly know what the material is. Just as functional. It does the job. Is it as beautiful? I don't know, because I do think that the wood adds a little bit of the charm. Like not a little, it is the entire charm of this greenhouse. And could I have a functional building this size for a similar price, not made out of wood and instead made out of metal? I actually don't know. I'm going to do some research when I go back inside to edit this video, because I would like to see how it stacks up. When I was researching, I was finding that to get a building this size, or I wanted a 12 by 16, so even smaller than what I actually ended up with, it would have cost like $15,000 to $20,000 just for the building, not for the rock or any of the accessories or flooring or anything like that. It was going to be like 15 to 20 grand. And I knew, like, I was pretty positive that I could build it for less than that. And I did, obviously. Lots more work, lots more emotional labor in all of the things, figuring out all of the elements. But I did save money. At what cost? Remains to be seen. So yeah, that is how much the greenhouse cost. I hope that you guys enjoyed hearing more about the process. And if you have any additional questions, leave them down below. I would love, I'm super transparent and open about the whole process, how much everything costs. If you have specific questions on how much like the polycarbonate cost or something like that, or where I got something, please leave a comment down below and I will do my best to share that. I am trying to think of all of the ways that I can share more about this build, especially in the cost, because I do know that that is people's like #1 question, and I could not find anybody who was willing to be super transparent about it. And I'm not saying that in a shady way, like people don't have to share how much they spend on things, but it was so hard to get a gauge on how much this would actually cost without people sharing. I was just basically like spitballing and guessing how much things would cost. So I hope that that's helpful. I really, really do. If you are wanting to start a project like this, like maybe you can estimate how much it would cost for you if you made a greenhouse like half of this size or a third of the size or the same exact size. You can kind of estimate based on that. Please leave any questions you have down below. I am working on making more content surrounding the greenhouse on my Instagram, on TikTok, and you can follow me over there. My @ is DeLaPlants. Would love for you to follow me and subscribe to this channel. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next greenhouse chores video. Bye!